The American couple had given up hope and remained motionless in that dark alley for a long time. They expected to be found any moment and summarily shot like stray dogs. They had lost their fear of death and welcomed it as a respite from their condition. If it wasn't against their Christian faith, they would have killed each other and departed from that hellish of country. It was Christina who asked her husband to kill her first and then kill himself. She concluded that, everywhere they went, they had seen only death and destruction. She understood why those 900 Jews at the Masada fortress had killed their children, wives, daughters, mothers, and then killed each other to the last standing man. They had preferred to die by their own swords rather than surrender and taken slaves and tortured to death by the Roman soldiers. Michael rebuked his wife and reminded her that they were worshipped a living God. He is a sovereign God and he alone would decide when and how they should die. One of his 10 commandments simply said, "Thou shalt not kill." He also told her that, only the bad guys in the Bible have killed themselves, such as King Saul, Ahithophel, Zimri, and Judas. Their continuous suffering was nothing compared to the suffering that Job endured. He then said to his wife that, what she was suggesting what Job's wife had suggested to her husband. Job's wife, who after her husband had suffered numerous catastrophes at the hand of Satan, encouraged him to curse God and die. But, Job refused to consider the evil suggestion. Suicide in the Bible was usually the result of evil men realizing what was in store for them as a result of their evil. In other instances, people were encouraged not to kill themselves or chose not to do so on their own, as being the better choice. Suicide is simply not condoned in the Bible. The American couple spent their first night in the streets of Juba sleeping like homeless people in a dark corner of the same alley. They slept by shifts for fear of being attacked and eaten alive by those stray dogs which kept up their harassment throughout the night. It was yet another long and horrifying night that they spent in Africa. When morning finally came, they did not know whether to venture out of their alley or continue sitting there until starvation would end their troubles. They were thirsty, hungry, fearful, and hapless. They felt as if the killers in the night were sweeping the streets for the ones that got away. Basic necessity forced them to drag their tired bodies and move out of the alley. Juba was like a ghost town. The streets were deserted. People were hiding in their houses. Only military vehicles and police cars patrolled the streets looking for any non-Dinkas to pick up and restock the holding facilities. The test of a Dinka was simply the response to a Dinka question. If the suspect failed to answer in the right tongue, he would have sentenced himself to death. Sometimes, Dinka soldiers and policemen broke into people's houses to check on the occupants. Anyone so positively identified as a non-Dinka would be unceremoniously dragged from their homes to the killing fields or simply shot on the spot. In response, thousands of people ran to the UN refugee camps, seeking shelter and protection. The Dinka soldiers invariably followed them there and killed many of them along with the odd UN worker. The couple continued to walk the main streets, directionless. 2 military vehicles and a police car passed them by without stopping. A few civilian cars went along their way without incident. Every time, a car passed them by, their hearts began to beat like drums. After walking for a couple of hours, they found themselves in an area with tall buildings. Some of those buildings bore the names of foreign embassies and consulates. The couple approached one building and talked to the security guards. They revealed their original nationalities and then requested to be directed to the American embassy. They were told that due to the situation in Juba, all the foreign embassies were closed. The couple still asked to be shown the directions to their embassy. In that land of death and destruction, there was no place left for them to go to except the building that flew the stars and stripes on its flagpole. They decided to gain entrance even if they had to sleep on the doorstep, starve or get shot in the process. Fortunately, the only foreign embassy was still operational was the American embassy. The couple felt like they had reached home ground. There were hundreds of people like them who were stranded in south of Sudan and wanted to exit as soon as possible. Most of them were originally South Sudanese who went to America as refugees and had acquired American citizenship, but came back to work in their country of origin. Now they all wanted nothing more than to flee the genocide and return to the States. There was heavy security. The security guards were American Marines flown in from the nearby American military bases. The couple stood for hours under the blazing sun until their turn came. When they entered, they demanded the issuance of their American passports, which were taken from them by the Northern Sudanese Police Authority. Michael and Christina expected that it was their right to get their passports reissued to them at any overseas American embassy or consulate. When they filled out some applications and stated truthfully why their American passports were taken from them and who had confiscated them, their cases were referred to the ambassador. All other applicants had proof of their citizenship except them. All bona fide American citizens would be airlifted and flown to Kenya. When they arrived at the American embassy in Nairobi, they would be provided with food and temporary lodging until their repatriation to the United States of America. The American couple were exempted from those privileges because they lacked documentary evidence of their citizenship. Unfortunately, the ambassador refused to believe their story. The couple said they were ready to swear under oath by placing their right hands on the Holy Bible. The ambassador deadpanned them and snapped, "Even if I should believe your take, American immigration regulations do not permit me to issue any traveling documents because you have acted deceitfully by assuming alternative Muslim identities in spite of your nationality. You have no right to go to a recognized religious leader in the States and fool him. You have not only lied in the States, but you deceived many Arab countries by assuming false identities." The couple could not believe their ears when they heard an American diplomat speaking to them that way and accusing them as liars. According to the ambassador, the couple's passports were invalid documents because they had been obtained through deception and lying. The excuse that they gave for lying and claiming to be Muslims were deemed unacceptable. He sarcastically added that no one appointed them the saviors of Muslim women. The couple told him that they were ready to be prosecuted by the American law upon arrival. They said they were even ready to be sent directly to an American jail in the States and in due time stand trial for their transgressions. The only thing they wanted at that difficult situation was to be sent home. The American ambassador refused to grant them even that minimum right. When they reached the doorsteps of the American embassy, the couple expected to be received as heroes. Sadly, at the end of the day, their ambassador treated them as traitors rather than heroes. The couple knew that they had no option but to keep badgering the ambassador until finally he gave in and relented. He reiterated that there would be no travel documents issued before their case was first verified by the FBI. The embassy had to contact the FBI division in their city of origin to check the veracity of their claims. Short of that, they were to be denied any financial assistance, traveling documents, and air tickets, and the only American soil their feet would ever touch would be the grounds at the embassy. In the following weeks or months it would take to investigate their identities, it would be left to them to take care of themselves or to find someone to provide their food and accommodation in Juba. When all doors of hope were slammed on their faces, the American couple met a Good Samaritan in that lawless land. That Good Samaritan happened to be an employee of the American embassy and witnessed the mistreatment of the American couple. He was an Ethiopian Jew. The moment they were physically ejected from the embassy, this Ethiopian Jew approached them and offered his hand and promised to help. He gave his right hand to Michael, and while shaking hands with him he told him that he would be able to give them some help. He also shook hands with Christina, and then told the couple to wait for him in the street until he could complete his work, whereupon he would come and take them to a place offering protection and help. The couple felt as if God had sent down an angel to rescue them at a difficult and desperate moment. If that Good Samaritan had not appeared at that particular instant, it was conceivable that the couple might have either gone and drowned themselves in the Bahr al-Jabal River, the White Nile, or returned to their pursuers in abject surrender. For 2 days, the couple had foregone water and food. Christina was one of the richest women in India, and here in the youngest African country she and her husband were starving to death. They were longing for someone to give them a few drops of water and a loaf of bread. They waited, counting the minutes as hours. Their Good Samaritan reappeared at lunchtime and brought for them food and some soft drinks, carrying them out of the cafeteria of the embassy. There was not a single restaurant or shop open in the entire capital city. The whole city was placed under siege of a 24-hour curfew. The only place open was the Embassy of the United States of America. The embassy was open under pressure exercised by the U.S. government on the government of the south of Sudan. The permission to open the embassy under such emergency situation was issued directly by the President Salva Kiir. The embassy was keen to vacate all trapped American citizens to Kenya and Uganda and onward to the States. The American couple consumed the heavenly manna and quails and thanked their benevolent man 100 times for the gentle mercies shown to them. Then, they introduced themselves to their angel. He was such an open and frank person. He told them his name and the name of his wife. He went by the name Shlomo Mola and his wife's name was Nina Tamano Shela. Both were Jews. They were childless, and presently lived in a hotel room provided by the American Embassy. Since the civil war broke out in Juba, they were forced to flee for their lives and sought the protection of the embassy. All the foreign employees and workers of the embassy were accommodated in the same hotel and securely guarded around the clock by the American security guards. While the couple were still eating their food, the Jewish man told them everything about himself. He was an elderly man. He was a talkative man, but everything he said was pleasing to hear. He also cracked jokes and spoke in wise, soft words. He was that kind of a man who learned through long experience and could impart his lessons to his listeners in a short time. The couple were taken aback with his wisdom as well as his simplicity. After that, their Good Samaritan returned to his work and promised to come back once the day was done. When Shlomo Mola completed his day work, he returned and shared his plan to help them out. He told them that he had his own apartment, but since the unrest started he closed it up, and made his way to the hotel with his wife for their safety. He did not want them to take the same kind of risk and go and live in it without any security. He then said, the safest place for the couple was the UN refugees camp in Juba. Thousands of stranded locals and foreigners were living in the temporary refugees camps. In the camp they would be provided with lodging and food. He also said that he knew a few foreign workers in one particular refugee camp personally, promising to take them there himself and introduce his guests to them. After telling them what he intended to do for them, Shlomo Mola told the American couple why the American ambassador was unwillingly to help them. In a few words, he said, the ambassador was called Malik Baraka. He was an African American and member of the Nation of Islam. The couple understood why the Muslim ambassador was annoyed when they told him they came to witness of the abuse of Muslim women and later on want to expose it to the outside world. It was just like a couple of non-Muslim Americans went to Osama bin Laden or Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and told him the same story and then asked him to help them escape and return home. Shlomo Mola strictly warned the couple against trying to confront the ambassador of his religious bias while they were in the lawless state of south of Sudan. He strongly believed that the Muslim ambassador would seek the help of the Somali Muslim terrorists and silence them before they exit out of that jungle-like country. According to him, the first step for the American couple were to obtain refugee status in south of Sudan. With that, as foreigners, they could apply for resettlement at any other country. The best and fastest choice would be Kenya. When the couple reached Kenya, then they could reapply for resettlement in the United States of America. Such a process might take some time, but it was the best option available to them. Michael and Christina were not troubled by the fact that they were refugees in a foreign country, but their hearts bled blood and their eyes teared when they realized that they would have to return home to their own country as refugees. Shlomo Mola brought again food and drinks for his new miserable acquaintances. He joked that they should eat as much as they could since one never knows when one will find food next in South Sudan. Although he said it as a joke, but the wretched American couple perceived that that was the wisest and truest words he ever spoke since they met him. Understandably, they completely finished their meal in the gratitude shown by those who are accustomed none. Stranded South Sudanese Americans had turned the street in front of the American embassy into a safe haven. They were eating, sleeping, and doing all other human basic activities in that American stronghold street. They knew that if the Dinka soldiers and policemen came after them there, the American Marines would turn them into dead corpses. The Good Samaritan chose to risk his job in order to help the American couple. He told his driver to first take him with his two good friends to the refugees camp and then he could drop him off at the hotel. The car was marked as untouchable because it bore the American flag and had the name of the American embassy written all over it. If someone fired a bullet at it, it would mean war and woe to that person. It would be better if he wasn't born. While they were traveling inside that American vehicle, the couple never felt so safe and so honored, from the day they ventured out of the safe womb of their motherland and came to the Third World. The sense of humor of their Good Samaritan added to the beauty of the moment. In the midst of their adversity he made them to laugh after laughter had departed from their hearts for so long. As if they had visited hell for a year and miraculously came out of it. He made them to feel happy and secure after happiness and security were beyond their reach. He was truly an angel in human form. After registering them in a refugees camp and securing a humble tent for them, the Beta Israeli man kissed the American couple goodbye and left. He already told the couple that the camp wasn't that good but it was the only available choice for them. It was overcrowded beyond its intended capacity. It was built to house 3,000 but so far 13,000 people called it home. Due to the huge number of the displaced refugees there were many human crises. Diseases, lack of sanitation, less food, unwholesome water, and many refugees had no tents to sleep in and therefore they slept out in the open. Daily reports included rapes, thefts, fights, and deaths. A few times, people were attacked and killed at night by the Dinkas. 2 Indian UN workers were killed in one such Dinka raid. Due to those Dinka raids and natural catastrophes the refugees camps became for many like the killing fields of Cambodia. There were many foreign refugees in that camp. Majority of them were Somalians. There were also other African refugees. The only 2 Western refugees were Michael and Christina. They looked like 2 white moles among that sea of black ants. Their presence in the camp surprised everybody including the UN employees and workers. That fact worked for their good and led the staff treating them as VIP refugees or special inmates. They ate the same food the staff ate and lived in the quarters normally reserved for staff. Of course, there was a far more pressing reason, one known only to Sholomo and his friends. He was the one who broke yet another rule and requested his friends to treat those 2 good friends of his a bit differently due to the different environment they were born and brought up in. His recommendation worked yet another miracle. The couple's names were pushed to the top of the waiting list though they just came in. After living for 1 month, they were told that their names appeared in the list of those who were going to be transferred soon by a UN plane to another refugees camp at Nairobi.